r/AskReddit. Who was the weird kid of your school and where are they now? There was this kid who took a dump on the floor in the middle of math class in 7th grade. He dropped out in 10th grade. And last I heard he had died in a meth lab explosion. That was one hell of a wild ride. There was a weird boy in my high school who lots of people made fun of. I wasn't his friend but I left him alone at least. Some of the kids were real jerks to him and he was always getting beat up by the tougher boys. Mainly because he liked nerdy games and he refused to cut his hair, like ever. Since toddlerhood. Also he would make up fantasy world games with his best friend and they'd pretend like they lived in that world. Which is obviously going to make him stand out. He died 1 week after high school graduation in a car accident. I went to his funeral because my family knew his and a whole heap of the kids from school that were mean to him were there. Acting like he was their best mate and hit. His actual best friend went off his ducking tree at them right there in the service for even daring to show up. That's really sad. Sure, the guy sounded a little weird but he also sounds like he really enjoyed what he was interested in and I can appreciate that. I think his friend honored him well. Good on him. Duck those guys. I've read countless AskReddit threads like these so I doubt this one will be as hilarious as the others. But I'll post it anyway. He was considered weird because he wore a trench coat no matter the weather and acted like a stereotypical shady kid, as in he kept to himself. Hung out in unusual locations. Refused to talk to anyone about his personal life. Constantly wore things to hide his face like sunglasses or a hat. Carried around a fork for self-defense. Etc. Eventually there was a rumor going around that he obviously was a drug dealer and the reason he acted so strange is because he fried his brain. Since we had the same classes together I eventually got to know him well and as it turns out he wasn't a drug dealer but he sold produce to people. Stuff like fruit and vegetables. He told me and a group of friends that if we wanted any kind of produce to let him know and he'll get some for us. We were skeptical about his claims so we looked up the most expensive thing we could ask for, which was a spice called saffron, and a few weeks later he showed us a tiny baggie full of it and was asking that we pay him $40. Since that day he would bring in all of these obscure fruits and vegetables for us to sample. He got this thing called a durian and brought it to one of our classes to show us because we had never heard of it before but our teacher was from Thailand, where the fruit grows, and forced him to get rid of it because he didn't want his classroom to smell of durians. He would refuse explain where he got this stuff from or why he always carried some around. I'm not kidding when I say that sometimes you could find where he was in the school just by following the strong scent of oranges. Last I heard of him he is currently going to college for agriculture. The best stuff man. The 10/10 saffron stuff. 100% organic. Kashmiri. Hand sorted saffron. You gotta try it man. Seriously. I can get it for $12 a strand. Only cause you're my special customer. Ugh. It's more like $10 a strand. That it is crazy expensive. For reals. Look it up. You will be amazed at the effort required to grow and harvest this stuff. Bragged about ducking a cat. Super tight pussy yuck yuck yuck. Wore a jack-o'-lantern carved pumpkin as a mask for almost a whole day in December. Lit a kid's hair on fire in metal class because he was pissed he was the only ginger in class. Now? Jail. He blew his mom away with a shotgun after shooting her in the neck with a crossbow a few years after we graduated because he was playing with a gun and she took it away. Edit. It was metalworking class. You learned how to weld. Pipe fit. Stuff like that. The curriculum was Lemmy free unfortunately. Row. I hope he got a life sentence. Someone like him should not be out in the streets. Comma. One of the weird kids from my school just got sent to prison for raping a 12-year-old girl. So there's that. Holy hit. Pretty much. I gave this guy gum on the bus almost every day just to be nice and now my skin crawls when I think about it. Edit. Spelling. We had a mentally challenged kid named Joe and he learned to work the saxophone. Well, he didn't really learn it well. He would break it out during the lunch break in the cafeteria and wail on the saxophone and dance and make faces like he was awesome. He was not good at the saxophone. But he was awesome. There was a senior that would sit at the table and punch anybody that laughed at Joe. Who knows where Joe is these days? but I think he's probably playing a saxophone somewhere. I really hope he ended up being epic sax guy. Pretty cool of the senior kid. There was this weird kid in my school. Kind of chubby. Transferred in the middle of the year so had no friends at the start. Found him driving for Uber a few months back. He recognized me. I found out he was married and had just started at law school. Good for him. In grade school it was this chubby guy who got picked on. His family owned a local funeral home. Decades later I googled him and found he's been working at the family business. And at one point was charged with interfering with a female corpse. A boy who was adopted from Russia and would skip and dance more than he would walk. He was flamboyant and unapologetically himself. He died of suicide in grade 12 due to bullying. That's really sad. He just wanted to dance, damn it. If I saw him on the street I'd think he was a fun guy. He isn't weird. Just happy. A guy who had long greasy hair to his belly button, looked like Cousin It, and had 3 shirts he rotated. All black with a different colored anarchy symbol hand painted on them. Still had quite a few friends. Now he has no job, no friends, and sits on Facebook all day posting about how much he hopes ISIS or North Korea kills us all soon because he despises America. Class A neckbeard and touched by humans. That's also something strange about him. He's had girlfriends, close friends, and assumably sex but still turned out like he did. Sang Minecraft songs and had a roller backpack. Still has the backpack, but a lot more normal. Play Minecraft to cook some fish. My class would unironically blast this hit in homeroom back in high school. I'm pretty sure the teacher thought we were autistic for a week or so. Freshman year this kid snuck into the girls' locker during their athletic period and was caught hiding when they came back in to change. The same kid had sex with a 13-year-old after graduation and was arrested. Pretty sure he just got out of prison recently after about 5-6 years. Not really sure what he's up to nowadays. He was overweight, had odd manners, and interested in lots of nerd activities, for lack of a better term. Was friends with him in elementary school but lost touch after he went to a different high school. Found out years later that he committed suicide in his late teens. Poor guy got picked on by almost everybody. People suck. We wanted success stories. The meanest bully went on to get top grades and got a job offer for $120k after getting his MBA. That's a nice success story, right? There was a kid in elementary school who would always just refuse to do work and was obsessed with horses. Someone even mentions a horse dying, she would break down into tears and scream about how horses don't deserve to die. She also brought an anatomically correct toy horse to school and made sure everyone saw the plastic horse penis. Last I heard she died in a horse riding accident. Edit. Cliché edit. What the duck, why is this so upvoted? Died how she lived. Wildly. Cowgirl style. I just remember the kid who loved dinosaurs so much that he thought he was one. This was in elementary school and I don't remember his last name, but Dinosaur Eric. If you're out there, I hope you're the most baddest late 20-something dinosaur you can be. Not an Eric, but my elementary school actually sent me to therapy because I went through a phase of a couple years where I constantly acted like a velociraptor. Well, Jurassic Park's rendition of one. Really? Probably closer to a Utahraptor. I bit the therapist. And that was the end of therapy for me. If you're a woman, you bit me back in elementary school during one of your Velociraptor episodes. I just asked you to give the ball back. You didn't need to bite me. This guy makes me think of Ralphie from The League. Weird kid in high school was a nice kid and someone I was friends with. He was a small chubby boy who dressed kind of skaterish, in a lot of black, and always had an inordinate amount of product in his perpetually greasy looking hair. Good at art and all things creative, but picked last for every team and used to get made fun of by most of the jocks who had already had their growth spurts. Nice kid. Quiet. And he did have a few friends but picked on till the day we graduated. Now, thinned out and somehow grew about a foot between high school and college. And apparently got better with the product. He's a hairstylist in Los Angeles at a very well respected salon. Has a beautiful fiancée. Loves what he does and by all accounts has a pretty enviable life. I have him on Facebook and he's still just as nice as he was when we were 14. Meanwhile many of the jocks who picked on him, bald, overweight and single, and still hanging out at towny bars just a couple of miles from our old high school. Edited to remove me referring to him as S because it wouldn't be Reddit without pitchforks. This sounds like a early zeros rom-com starring Ryan Reynolds. Good guy becomes happy. Bad guys get ducked. This is the kind of story we need in here. We didn't have a wait. It was me. Wasn't it? Yeah, it's us. Me too, thanks. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Kind stranger. Now hand over the rest of it. Nice and easy. Well, I was the only emo kid at a fancy high school with only around 100 people, so I was definitely the weird kid. But the real weird kid was this guy who, as we found out later, had Asperger's. He did weird shit like jerking off in class, jerking off at a party, touching his dick while I was making out with a girl at a party, and screaming "Oh my GAA stringer" by the school lockers when a girl bent over and her panties were showing. Last I heard he was engaged. Good for you, Jay. One of my best friends kept drawing super grotesque shit, but it was really well done and not violent, so she actually got really high praise for it. One of the smartest people I ever met. We don't talk anymore. But after a long time spent saying she was miserable and worthless and destined to always be alone, she's getting married to a man and finishing up her degree in film history from a prestigious art school. She still needs and receives intense psychiatric care, but that's better than not getting care. This post reminds me of a kid in my elementary school who was really out there and used to lick his fingers randomly throughout the day. I asked him once, why? And he said because they are dry. Can't argue with that, I guess. But no clue what happened to him. A truly sad case. I don't know that she was too weird outside of the fact that others decided she should be so. She was the punchline of every cruel joke and tease from middle school cooties well through high school. Such a bright student. Always top 10%. But just couldn't get away from it, whether she tried to embrace the bullying or whether she tried to avoid contest it. Just too awkward, and honestly she would have been so much better off were she homeschooled or transferred. She could have left it all behind and thrived. I saw her years later after graduating college. She's a librarian. She was still awkward and still living with her parents, who drive her to work each day because she never tried for her license. We had one kid that in grade 5 and 6 would constantly be picking his nose. Like his finger was always ducking up his nose. Kids used to say Greg picks his nose. Greg picks his nose song to his face. And he just stood there with this blank look on his face like, is this supposed to upset me? Yeah. I do pick my nose. He also used to scrap the boogers off onto the inside of his desk. He had this goof look all the time and was socially awkward. Our French teacher knew that this kid was on the outside. And one day when he wasn't at school, she pleaded to our class to give him a chance, to include him, to talk with him, because it's hard when you are alone. She made lots of good points, and we felt bad for the way we had treated him. So we tried to include him in games at recess, talking with him. But it didn't work. He always came off as a jerk. Sort of superior. One time I was sitting on the handrail to my portable, and he pushed me off for some reason, can't recall what. As a joke or something. After that he went back to being a loner. I believe he left our school a year or two later, and was generally forgotten about. I checked Facebook for him once and found him. He's married. 2 kids. Seems to be okay. Still looks goofy. But whatever. I did wonder if he still picks his nose. As a nose picker myself, I'd say yes he does. Divorced. Works at the movie theater. And sending wildly inappropriate PMs on Facebook. I was in 8th grade. I had like one friend and I always wanted to handle with the snakes in science class. One day a kid holding the hamster wanted to hold the snake I had and came up to trade. The snake thought it was dinner time and bit the hamster, but I Steve Owened her off it just as fast. The hamster was fine thanks to that, but apparently some kids decided that I had deliberately tried to kill the hamster with the snake. I'm now looking to work full time with reptiles, so duck you. Anthony. I'm still the scary snake lady. There was this guy we called Potassium. Because it was his favorite element. He didn't mind the nickname. His house exploded. He died. The cops thought he was making meth. Turns out that he was making explosives. Seemed like the right way to go since he liked to mention that potassium is cool due to it exploding when touching water. We also called him Bones since he was very skinny but had busily large joints. We didn't call him Bones to his face. He carried a small duffel-style book bag in each hand so he could carry all his books at one time. He would charge down the hallways at steam engine speed, and because he carried a lot of mass he could do some damage. So people got out of his way. He was obsessed with the negative attention a power nerd would get in those days, mid-1980s. Once when it snowed shortly after the TV drama The Day After, he cackled and said nuclear winter in a loud villainous voice. He was my friend and agreed to go along with a scheme cooked up by another friend to get him elected prom king. We campaigned hard for him. On election day you could barely find anyone who voted for anyone other than him. The administration fixed the election and awarded it to a student council guy no one liked or voted for. He always wanted to go into engineering. Something involving nuclear weapons or space. He got a master's degree in aerospace and designed thrusters for a while. He decided the field was not what he wanted after all and went back for a second master's in material science, which I believe is where he remains. He is one of the most kind-hearted people I have ever met. He sees something to like about everyone and is more oriented towards maintaining social networks than just about anyone from my high school. He is always the one who will want to include people on the social margins. He will always ask about your family. He has never married. At least since the last I heard from him. But I think he had a few relationships. I would like him to find someone. He deserves it. Footnote. I got to know the actress who played Jolene Dahlberg when she was in college and I was either finishing college or applying to law schools. She remains the best looking woman I have ever seen in real life. We went on one date. But because I saw her as so out of my league I did not realize it was not just a friendly evening, so I flubbed it. I have still never seen the movie despite it being the TV equivalent of a blockbuster and having a sort of personal connection to it. When I was in elementary and middle school, there was this weird girl in our grade. We were only a grade of about 50-60 kids. So everyone knew each other. I'll call her Lily to refrain from using her real name. She was weird but she had a tough life growing up. Went through hell to be quite honest. So her behavior as a child was strange. She got bullied a lot for it. Didn't really have any friends either. I remember whenever she approached groups of people they would visibly cringe and be uncomfortable. Typical of children when they're subjected to the collective notion that she was weird and shouldn't be spoken to. Really duck. After middle school she went to a different high school. Ended up going through even worse problems as both her parents ended up passing away. She also had an emotionally and physically abusive partner that really ducked her up. I think it was in 10th grade when I lost touch with her. This was recently after she had to move with other family on account of her parents passing. At this point I was actively talking to her. And we kindled a friendship, we became good friends. I was very worried. I didn't have any contacts regarding who to contact and I was afraid something happened to her. It turns out Lily was in a treatment facility. She surprised me by messaging me on Facebook about a year and a half later. Naturally, she was very damaged and needed help. So she received it and went through some therapeutic program. Got her interested in school. She was absent from school very often from what I remember beforehand. Helped her apply to college. All that jazz. I don't know many specifics about the therapy program she was in, but I like to think it worked because she is a completely different person and for the better. She has an interest and talent in graphic design and is currently attending university for it. She has a lot of friends and seems to actually enjoy life. When before she was clearly very depressed and risked her life. Sometimes I think about what she went through and the transformation she had, and I am so proud she did that. I see her as a very strong person and she finally has a bright future. I'm so happy there were people who helped her go on the right path. TLDR. Weird kid who got bullied in my grade a lot. Went to some therapy program. Now doing well in university. Dude in my high school who was a grade above me wrote some girl a love letter using his own blood. Not kidding. Currently works at the local game store and appears to be in a loving relationship. Still kind of ducked up, he wrote a girl a love letter using his own blood. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach. When feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace passes out. Was it like a long letter or a simple I love you? Every now and then I ask myself this. I've tried looking for him on Facebook and I just can't find him. I'm kind of worried. He was a good guy. Really. Once you got past the masturbation and alien topics of conversation. I was the weird kid because I had debilitating OCD and a years-long nervous breakdown throughout high school. I'm doing a lot better now due to the right combination of drugs and therapy. Checks this thread to make sure nothing similar to myself is mentioned. Similar? I'm reading most of these hoping it's not going to be literally me. The weird kid at my high school was a religious nut. He always wore a homemade necklace with a cross made from sticks and went around the cafeteria handing out stick crosses to people and saying God bless you. I never had class with him so I don't interact with him a ton. But all I ever heard him talk about was Jesus. He never acted super weird. But some of his mannerisms were off-putting. He spoke in a really high-pitched voice very softly. Which was kinda creepy. Especially considering that wasn't his actual voice. His real voice was deep as hell. And seeing him transition between voices was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Everyone was pretty nice to him. And he never did anything outright illegal or harmful. He's 20 now. Married to a 17-year-old who is equally as hyper-religious as he is. Legal age is 18 here so I assume her parents consented. And they have a son with a ridiculous biblical name. I feel sorry for that child. He recently wrote a birthday post on his Facebook in which he refers to Jesus as his daddy several times. It was an uncomfortable read. Thanks for watching and be sure to subscribe to RedditQueen for the best daily content.